Special thanks for today's sponsor, TubeBuddy. I've been using it for almost 2 years, and it's amazing. Custom templates, bulk editing, tag rankings, and a lot more. If you want to grow your channel, TubeBuddy can help. Click the link below to learn more. Hey, what's up guys? I'm BTC. Having the right crosshair in Overwatch is incredibly important. It can have a huge impact. The difference between being able to consistently hit your target and always being ever so slightly off the mark. Now, just recently, Blizzard added a whole bunch of customization options, and people are always wondering, well, what is the best crosshair to use? Well, first, you have to understand there is no single best crosshair. There's always going to be a little bit of variety. Some things will work a little bit better for different characters, and other players will just have certain preferences. So the first thing is, where do you go to customize the crosshair? You need to open up your options, then you're going to go to Controls, and then Reticle, which is right here in the center of the screen. There's a bunch of different types. You have Default, Circle, Crosshairs, Circle, and Crosshair, and then Dot. And then after that, you also have a bunch of advanced options. So Show Accuracy, Color, Thickness, Crosshair Length, Center Gap, Opacity, Dot Size, and then Dot Opacity. Now, you can mess around with a whole bunch of this stuff. We're going to get to that in just a second. But the next thing you need to know is what kind of character are you actually trying to make the crosshair for? So there's basically 3 different types of characters. The first one is going to be something like Soldier, where it requires a high amount of accuracy. The next is going to be a character like Tracer, who requires a high amount of accuracy, but also has a large amount of spread. And the third type of character is one that doesn't have to aim at all. Alright, so let's quickly run through all of the advanced options. So we're going to switch it over to the circle. The first thing is Show Accuracy. You do not want this. Make sure it's off all the time. It's supposed to kind of help new players, but it's actually bad. It will make you miss more often than not. And for the crosshairs, if you jump over there, it does the same thing. Just leave it off. It doesn't matter what you're using, what character. Never use the Show Accuracy. So the color is going to be the next one. And it really doesn't matter what you use. Just make sure that your crosshair doesn't ever blend into the background. It doesn't blend into the map itself or the other characters. So usually using a bright color like the teal or the green, the purple or the yellow will help it kind of pop out and stand out on top. And it makes it easier for you to see and then shoot your targets. Now the thickness just makes the circle thicker or thinner. Crosshair length doesn't apply here. It only applies to the crosshair. So that's what that is right there. We're going to go back to the circle. The center gap is this right here. And then for the crosshairs, that's the center gap right there. The next thing is the opacity. This just makes it easier to see through. And if you have it at 100, you can't see through it at all. If you have it at 0, then it doesn't even show up. I like to have it around 80, so that way I can kind of see through it a little bit, but I can still see the crosshair itself quite easily. So the dot size just makes the dot bigger or smaller if you have one. And then the opacity, it does the same thing, makes it easier or harder to see through. So I'm going to start with characters that require a high amount of accuracy, like Soldier 76 and McCree. They have to shoot smaller targets at longer distances. And because of that, you're going to want to have a smaller, thinner crosshair. And also, it's generally not a good idea to have a dot in the center. I know some McCree players like to use the dot, but I tend to find that it's more problematic at long range when the dot actually tends to obscure the target more than kind of help you. So, like, look at this. At long range, this crosshair, I can line it up right on that bot's head, and I can easily get these headshots. You know, I can see the target even through the crosshair. So if there was a dot there, then it would be a little more difficult. So I'm going to throw something up on the screen right now. This is from CSGO. These are professional players, some of the best in the world. Now, this chart is a couple years old, but it is still basically the same. It hasn't changed for a very long time. So in CSGO, all of those players have to shoot very small targets. You know, they got to get those headshot targets at really long distances usually. And these are the types of crosshairs that they've used. Now, you'll notice that there's some variety in color, there's a little bit of variety in shape and thickness, but they're all pretty much following the same set of rules. All of the crosshairs are pretty small, they're compact, the lines tend to be fairly thin. There's usually no dot, and they're also brightly colored so that they stand out against the background. Now, when it comes to aiming in a first-person shooter, pro CSGO players are pretty much the best in the world. So this is a really good template for you to use whenever you're trying to play McCree or Soldier 76. Alright, so this is what I use for characters like Soldier 76 and McCree. Again, accuracy is off, it should always be. I like to use the teal for all of them. The thickness is going to be 2. If it's a little bigger, it just seems awkward to me, and smaller, it can be a little difficult to see, so I think 2 is pretty solid. The crosshair length, this, you know, it can kind of vary from person to person. I like it at about 6. The center gap, it's just big enough where at a far distance I can still see the enemy player head through the crosshair, so I like that. Again, opacity is always the same. Dot size doesn't matter because it's off, and the opacity, like I said, the dot is off. Moving on, the next group of characters also require a lot of accuracy, but at the same time, their weapons have a lot of spread to them. So we're talking characters like Doomfist, Reaper, Sombra, Tracer, Diva, and Roadhog. So you have to be accurate, but wherever you're shooting, the bullets aren't going to go dead center in that crosshair. Instead, they're going to spread out a little bit more. So you can still use the crosshair for like Soldier 76 and McCree for these characters as well. It'll work perfectly fine. But I tend to like something a little bit different. I like to use the circle with the dot in the center of it. And the reason for that is because when you start to shoot, you'll notice that the bullets are spreading out. And the circle gives you a pretty good indication of where that bullet spread is going to be. And whenever you're using one of these characters, you don't want to point directly at the enemy head, because then what ends up happening is your bullets kind of spray and they will miss a little bit. So you want to aim a little bit lower, usually at the neck, so that way some of the bullets will go into the body and some of the bullets will go into the head. And that's generally what you want to do. Alright, so let me show you how I build that crosshair. So first is it's going to be a circle. Show accuracy off, of course. Color is still teal. Thickness, I still like the 2. Crosshair length doesn't matter. Center gap is 50. The reason why I like this particular number for this crosshair is because a lot of the characters that have spread, their shots tend to fall within a circle that has this 50 for a center gap. So that's why I like to use that. Opacity is, going to be the same. Dot size, I like the 5. It's not too big that it's going to be problematic, but it's not small enough that I can't see it either. And the reason why this doesn't really matter, unlike with McCree and Soldier 76, is because you're going to be shooting at targets that are up close. You're not shooting at targets that are far away, so you don't have to worry about the dot really blocking anything. And again, the opacity for the dot is going to be the same as the rest of the crosshair. So if you don't like using just the circle, if you find it a little too hard to aim, there are a couple of other options you can use for those characters that require a high amount of accuracy but also have a lot of spread. So you could go back to just using the crosshair, but you would have to make it a little bit bigger in order to account for that spread area that each shot is going to have. So I like using, again, the thickness is a 2, crosshair length of 10, center gap of 25. And if you want to, you can always change it to circle and crosshair. So then you're going to have this little kind of like focus area in the middle, but you still have the little bit of the crosshair to help you aim. I mean, all of this is just preference. I mean, you can use the circle, the crosshairs, the circle and the crosshair. It doesn't matter. But for these characters that have the spread, I would suggest using a crosshair that does kind of show that area of spread that it's going to have. So moving on to the last group of characters, these are the ones that just don't really require any accuracy. It's going to be Reinhardt, Winston, and Symmetra. I don't include Mei in this group because she actually needs to be able to hit those right clicks at quite a distance. So I would recommend using a crosshair on Mei that is similar to what you would use on like Soldier 76 or on McCree. Now for Reinhardt, I'm just using the circle one, the same one that I had for like Reaper and stuff, because again, it really doesn't matter, you're just going to be swinging around, but the circle is pretty good for the hitbox size of the fire strike, so that definitely helps a little bit. For Winston, it's completely irrelevant. Like, there's absolutely nothing that you need to aim on Winston. So you can use literally anything for a crosshair, and it doesn't matter at all. The last character is going to be Symmetra, and even though her left click will like auto lock onto people, you still want to fire off those little right click orbs, and I find that again this 50 size circle is really good for that size. So look at this. It's pretty good, like it's spot on. So you can line up the center of the circle with whatever you're aiming at and know that the orb that travels is going to pretty much hit anything in that area. Alright, so let me quickly run through the characters to show you which crosshair I would use. So for the first crosshair, which was that small, compact one, I would use that for Genji, McCree, Pharah, Soldier 76, Bastion, Hanzo, Junkrat, Mei, Torb, Widow, Orisa, Zarya, Ana, Lucio, Mercy, and Zenyatta. For that second crosshair, which was the circle one, I would use that for Doomfist, Reaper, Sombra, Tracer, Diva, Reinhardt, Roadhog, and Symmetra. And for the last character, which is Winston, like I said, you can use pretty much anything you want. It really doesn't matter. Use anything you want. And just like what I showed you with all of those different CSGO crosshairs, there can be some variation to them, but keep in mind that the general concept is what tends to work best. So there you have it, guys. I hope this helped. Let me know what kind of crosshair you like to use down in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to check out my Discord server where you can join the community and find other players to group with. The link for that is in the description. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button. Remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault. Also, special thanks to all my Patreon supporters for helping to make this all possible. If you'd like to see what kind of cool rewards you can get for supporting the channel, check the links on screen and down below.